All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the Comics Cube. I am Dui. I'm with Paul and Lamar. We are talking about the 2009 DC Comics event, Blackest Night.
This man don't put. How did I know he was gonna do that, man?
He will be wearing that through the entirety of the video. He may or may not break out into the respective oaths at some point. Blackest Night came out in 2009. It was written by Geoff Johns and was drawn, the main storyline was drawn by the great Ivan Reis. Geoff Johns is pretty great too. Ivan Reis is really, really good in this one, and I'm a big fan of his work and the way that this whole comic looks. It is it takes place at a very specific time in DC Comics because a few years before this, Hal Jordan had just come back from the dead. We just had Infinite Crisis where uh, Connor Kent died, and then we had Final Crisis where Connor Kent came back to life, and Bart Allen died, and then we had when did Bart Allen die?
Bart Allen was beaten to death by the Rogues after he'd been
Yeah,
aged up to an adult in Infinite Crisis,
yeah,
and he had become the Flash. But in Final Crisis Legion of Three Worlds, he came back as a little boy again.
This is a legitimate sentence in superhero comics. And the Barry Allen came back in Final Crisis, and he had just gone through his own rebirth. Batman died, although he's not really dead. He was sent back in time. Aquaman is dead for some reason. I don't think we ever actually saw him die, did we?
Yes, we did.
yeah.
He got turned into the Dweller in the Depths in his Aquaman, in his own title, which was currently being led by Arthur Joseph Curry, who was like a younger Aquaman who looked just like him or something.
Yeah, yeah. It
And,
got really weird. Like the Dweller of the Depths. Basically, he's like Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean, but he's buck naked.
yeah,
You can
yeah.
imagine that.
That doesn't mean he
Yeah,
died.
Well, he gets killed as the Dweller of the Depths
yeah, yeah, yeah.
during that
Yeah,
run.
yeah. He got
Um,
his third out for sure. Yeah,
yeah,
The
yeah.
Martian Manhunter died a very unceremonious death in
yeah,
the prologue to Final Crisis. So
yeah.
why are we talking
Mhm.
about people dying? It's because Blackest Night is about Necron, who brings all of these dead characters back to an undead state. I am going to also mention that this was the height of The Walking Dead and the zombie craze. So this was DC's version of zombies, really.
Mhm.
Not to be confused with Marvel's version of zombies, which is a little more straightforward zombie stuff.
Right.
Okay. Uh, Talk to me about Blackest Night. What were your feelings going into it back when it came out? I know you guys, as did I, like we all read it as it was coming out. Lamar.
Yeah, like for me, if I had been reading like uh Geoff Johns's Green Lantern stuff, since like the rebirth stuff, and I'm just gonna stop real quick and say that that whole thing, the Green Lantern rebirth, uh Secret Origin, Sinestro Cold War, Blackest Night is all like connected. Do yourself a favor if you love this stuff and just read them all, right? And you know, and so I just was like, okay, it seemed to me like because I didn't know at the time like where he was going with all of this stuff, right? So, but the way that he was writing it, it was all connected, even though it's kind of like you're talking about like a 5 year gap, kind of. So, or a 5 year time period, not a gap. So, I didn't know that because I've never have really been into like all the behind the scenes stuff, when it comes to that. I just kind of read the stories. So I didn't know what he was doing. And then, you know, like once you get to this point, like after the Sinestro Cold War, which is significant because the Book of Oa has these rules, right? And one of the rules before this is that, you know, you're not supposed to use lethal force with the power rings against like your enemies, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of one of the things that got Hal Jordan into trouble when he turned into Parallax and stuff back in the 90s. So,
I mean, among many other things.
yeah, amongst other stuff, right? So, so in this particular instance, when the Sinestro Cold War thing happens, you know, the Guardians remove that that rule. So
Right.
then it becomes a thing where it's like, yeah, you can use lethal force against the Sinestro Corps, but it's kind of like in gradients. So then it's like, hey, listen, if the enemies of the Green Lantern Corps, you can do what you got to do, you know, when it comes to that. So we're just removing that lethal force rule altogether. So there's this big thing, and they call it the War of Light, you know, and it's just it's crazy and it's wild. And if you love Sinestro, this is like where he gets his money, the whole thing. Like Sinestro is just like, wow. So there was this big push for not just the Green Lantern Corps as a group, but also the individual people. Because along the way, you encounter these other lanterns who are in the emotional spectrum and how they harness those energies, you know, and stuff like that. And if you don't mind, I'm gonna let Paulie take that one because I kind of feel like he's gonna rock that out, right?
Well, he has the rings
Yeah,
to prove
gotta
it.
give it to him. Right. So yeah. So like going into it, and there's also a Blackest Night #0. So I read that it was an issue of Free Comic Day, like the Free
Yeah.
Comic Book Day, and it went pretty quick. I almost didn't get it because like that was the one that like everybody wanted. So I got it and I went home. Well, actually, I went to the food court in the mall and I sat down and read it, and I was just like, you know, I was like nah, I'm not ready for this, right? Because I had no clue, and then the way they tied everything together, um, and you know, basically like, well, I'm gonna let Paulie take it from here because I was about to go into the whole thing with the emotional spectrum and the beings and stuff. So, Paulie, you go ahead and take it, bro.
Go
Oh, thank
ahead.
you.
Yeah.
While you're
Well,
at it, you can explain to me how willpower is an emotion.
yes.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I just want to agree with everything Lamar said about how amazing Geoff Johns' Green Lantern run was. And sometimes, like, you're rewarded as a long-time comic book fan when writers and artists and editors build up to things successfully. And they don't do it very often. Like quite often they mess it up. Either they upset one of the writers and they go away, or some editor comes in with a bright idea and derails everything, or they chuck a writer off the book and it all gets derailed, or they try and rush it. But what we got with Blackest Night was just years of build up, like really good build up, culminating in this amazing event. And part of that build-up was slowly introducing these rings and these different emotional spectrum core people. So Sinestro, of course, had a yellow ring since the 50s or the
Yeah.
60s. So that had always been around. And they'd gone into it like a little bit deeper. Like we knew it was from the antimatter dimension, and Guy owned it for a while and figured out that it was powered by beating up Green Lanterns, which kind of ties into the eventual reveal. Um, and then, like you find out during Geoff Johns' run that there's there's a possibility for a whole core of yellow lanterns, just as there's a whole core of green lanterns. But just as the Green Lantern rings are powered by willpower, which makes perfect sense. That emotion we all feel, willpower. All the Green Lanterns, the best at willpower, the best at giving up cigarettes. Yeah, so just as there's a whole core based on willpower, the Yellow Lantern core, the Sinistro core, is built around fear, the ability to instill great fear in people. So you get really cool moments like Batman getting chosen to be a member of the Sinestro Corps because, of course, he has the ability to instill great fear, but he rejects the ring. But you do get a cool moment where you see him wearing a yellow ring with a Sinestro Corps outfit. And then gradually after that, you get more and more of these rings introduced, like the Red Lantern ring is particularly notable because it ties all the way back to an Alan Moore story from the 80s, where there's this forbidden sector where the Guardians of the Universe have imprisoned all the really horrible people in the universe, and they're just horrible monsters with tongues and eyes and all kinds of things. And one of these monsters we find out in Geoff Johns' run is Atrocitus, and he gets loose, and it all ties into sort of Abin Sur, who gave Hal Jordan his ring, and then you find out that Atrocitus is the leader of the Red Lantern Corps, who are powered by rage, which is quite exciting. Although Alan Moore did compare this to DC being like raccoons going through his rubbish, which which is quite funny and kind of true. But
I will say, while it is kind of true, he did set it up to be used.
He did set up to be used, and if you're going to use anyone's rubbish, right, you want to use Alan Moore's rubbish, the gourmet rubbish, like. So yeah, I can't blame them for that. And yeah, eventually, you get blue rings, which hope, and then you've got orange rings, which is greed. And of course, because the clever thing about that, because it's greed, there's only one member of the Orange Lantern Corps because he won't let anyone else have a ring, which is a really clever. And there's loads of really little clever touches like that in the build-up. And then eventually, all of this comes to a head where you find out these Black Lantern rings that bring people back to life as zombies. And of course, part of the build-up as well was the fact that DC kept killing off their superheroes and supervillains.
Yes.
And Geoff Johns rather cleverly sort of retconned this sort of wastefulness on the part of DC as part of the build-up in a way. All these characters have been killed, and now it's just sort of like build-up for this amazing event. So that's what I love about it, the successful build-up.
I do want to add a few things to what you said. The genius of having a Sinestro Corps, because Sinestro had a ring since the 50s.
Yeah.
It stands to reason, and it is such an obvious idea that therefore there would be many of those rings.
Yeah.
And I don't know if no one's ever thought of it before. I don't know if it was an editorial edict to never do a Sinestro Corps type of thing, but it's just such an obvious idea. And I think when you do a really obvious idea like that, you've got a potential gold mine.
Yeah.
Extrapolating on that is the whole 7 other corps, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other genius thing is making the long established star sapphires one of the corps. Basically the purple core.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always thought that and they represent love. It must be said that the rings do not choose you based on whether or not you're a good person. It chooses you based on that specific emotion that you are able to master. So Batman could be a member of the Sinestro Corps if he chose to be, because he has the ability to instill great fear. It's not that he agrees with Sinestro. It's not that he is aligned with Sinestro's ideals or anything, but it's just that very basic thing. He has the ability to instill great fear.
Yeah. Speaking to your point, the way that it's set up is that like you have the willpower in the middle, because like willpower is like the perfect balance of emotion, right? And you have on one side you have red for rage, orange for greed, and then you have the yellow for fear, right? And yeah, Paul is giving the figure demonstration, right? So the closer that you are to willpower, the easier it is to control for a person who has the ring to control the power. So like, fear is easier to control than, greed, and greed is easier to control than rage, right? And on the other side, you have blue, which is hope, the indigo, which is compassion, figure two, and then you have, violet, which is love, right? So same thing. It's easier to control hope uh than it is to control, compassion, and then than it is to control love, right? And so, and that's actually really, the way they do it, it's like, like for example, you have this planet like the Green Lantern planet, have Oa, where the big power battery is that powers all the rings and stuff. That's where they keep their books. They have all this knowledge about the universe, and there's all these other things where you kind of like, it's like a big university almost. Like you learn about yourself, and you learn about other, so there's this overarching aspect of like tolerance and interacting with other people throughout the universe, stuff like that. Whereas when you get to like the yellow ring, for example, on the planet Quard, the rings are made out of, I think it's called cordite, I think is what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that yellow stone. And Sinestro has enslaved the entire planet. And the only thing that these Quard people do is they work in the processing mines for digging out the rock to make the rings. And he runs a tight ship. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, he basically runs this planet, and he just chose to enslave everybody. And somehow he's able to justify that, right? But he is the arbiter of that yellow energy. Like, he answers to nobody, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing, and so the way that this stuff kind of happens, these we'll call them the prime lanterns, right? Because there's always like one major lantern. So, it's different for each one. And that's the interesting thing. Like, it's a different setup about these planets where you have these giant power batteries and things like that. And they all have their own kind of setup that revolves around the energy that the rings harness, you know, and none of them are the same. They're under totally different circumstances. And that's before we even get into like the beings that are basically the avatars for these different lights, you know. And so it's just like layers upon layers upon layers of detail that was added that wasn't there before, right? So when it, like you were saying with Sinestro, when he was the only guy that had the ring, it was just, he was the guy that had the ring, and it was powered by fear, and he could beat up Green Lanterns because they had that whole aversion to yellow, right? So so, and that was it, right? But it's a little more involved now, and it was just amazing how this was worked out over like 5 years. Yeah.
It's a 5-year buildup to this
Yeah.
event.
Yep.
So when Blackest Night happened, the first thing that happens in it is the Black Hand kills Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and then brings them back to life. Now, normally the thing about Hawkman and Hawkgirl is they're all about being dead and then coming back to life anyway. But then the Atom is over there as well, because the Atom and Hawkman are best friends. And the Atom had just come back, right? He'd been gone for a while because of the events of Identity Crisis. And now what ends up happening is now they have to deal with all of these different people getting brought back to this undead state under the control of the Black Rings, including the Martian Manhunter, including Aquaman, including the original Firestorm, Ronnie Raymond, the Elongated Man, Dolphin, Aquagirl, etc. This is a murderer's row. This is basically a Justice League in undead form. So, given the stakes at this point, and given who was there, starring in the book at the start of it, Hal Jordan, Barry Allen, Mara, Ray Palmer, what did you guys think of the way that the balance of the stakes of the good guys versus the undead guys were building up? Did you think they were screwed?
I just remember they had an advertising campaign before they released any of the proper artwork, the designs for these zombies. They did an advertising campaign where some of the zombies were shown in a sort of negative print.
Yeah.
So all the sort of inking was in white against a black background, and you had to use Photoshop to flip it then to get like a proper glimpse of the artwork as it would look in the comic, which is really cool. Um, and that's just sort of they really built up the excitement of like, especially for someone like me, I'm a huge Aquaman fan, and it's like, yeah, Aquaman's coming back as a zombie. I mean, that was so cool. So yeah, it's just, and it just shows how serious they were about this, and the feeling that like you didn't know what was going to happen with it, who was going to be standing at the end of it,
Mhm.
because they weren't just using like just random, I don't know, trying to think of someone who doesn't matter. It'd be good. They weren't just using, for example, Dolphin and Aquaman's son Koryak as the zombies. They were
Although
using.
Dolphin is a zombie in this one. Yeah.
She is a zombie, but they weren't. And Koryak, though, he doesn't even merit coming back as a zombie. Poor Nobody remembers Korea. But they weren't just using these sort of minor characters. They were using Aquaman himself. They were using Martian Manhunter. So that was like huge stakes. And it just made you feel that this sort of mattered.
And it also, aside from everything that you said, because they used the major characters, the minor characters that they did use ended up seeming a little bit more important. Like it is
Yeah.
a huge deal that the Black Lanterns could not get to either Dove.
Yeah. That was really
Mhm.
cool.
Mhm.
That, like, yeah, Dove couldn't get resurrected.
Lamar, any thoughts on the zombification of these characters?
Yeah, like when it first came out, right? They showed like the promo stuff and the character designs and stuff like that, right? And so they showed like a handful of characters, right? And the designs for those characters. And I was like, "Oh, this is really cool," you know? Like and so I was looking forward to it, but I thought that it was just gonna be like those characters, or like there were a couple more, right? And that the whole event was gonna base around them, because one of them was like the Earth 2 Superman, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, geez, I mean, you have an Earth 2 Superman that you can't kill because he's already dead. Like, what else do you need, right? So, like, so I'm like, okay, well, but then I started reading the story and seeing how involved it was. And I was like, oh, okay, they're not playing, right? So, one thing I'll mention is that, in Blackest Night Zero, it centers around a conversation between Hal and Barry, and they're at Batman's grave, and they're talking about like all the people they lost over the years and stuff like that. And so, it ends with Hal having a conversation with Batman, but he's talking to Barry, and he's like, through it all and all the differences we had, he hit me in the mouth, and all this other kind of stuff last time I saw him with him. But but that's my man though, right? And so, and Barry
Al
was
and
like,
Bruce do not like each other.
no, no, no. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They don't get along very well at all, but obviously they respect one another. But yeah, so he just was like, yeah, I know, but that's my guy though. And he was like, yeah, they'll be back. Don't worry about it, because that's kind of Barry. And Black Hand is in the background watching them as this is happening, right? And so that's when he goes to Bruce Wayne's grave and he picks the skull out of the body and he does the Black Lantern oath and so now, whenever you see Black Hand, he's carrying this Batman skull, and it's cool because as he's carrying the skull, it's like there are times where the skull kind of like has this energy coming off of it that's like Batman's cowl, right? This is a
Yeah.
really, really cool visual, right?
Yeah.
And he's walking around the entire time with the Black Lantern power ring on one hand and the Batman skull in the other hand, you know. And it also should be noticed too, before we go any further with Black Hand, because we were talking about these avatars for these different powers. Black Hand is the avatar for the Black Lanterns, right? So he's like that physical embodiment of death, who Necron actually ordered to commit suicide, right? So if you read the Green Lantern uh if you read the Green Lantern books, the tie-in book, they go into all of that, where you know he takes his weapon that harnesses the Green Lantern energy, and you know he sticks it to his head and blows his brains out. If you're into that kind of stuff, you should definitely read that, because Doug Mank did his thing in that book. So, but yeah,
I will point out to exactly what you're saying. The first four-ish issues of Blackest Night, Hal Jordan is not as in it as you would think he would be.
Right.
Because all of the stuff that the Lanterns are doing are happening over in the Green Lantern book. It is focusing on these other characters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's like it's interesting the way they do it that way, because I wouldn't say that he's like a background character in his own book. It's just that there's so much happening, especially in that first issue where they lay everything out. And you know, it's just like, oh man, this is like it's like a universal level thing, right? So
yeah.
And each issue the stakes get raised, right? And so by the time you get to the fourth issue, that's kind of like where everything just kind of breaks loose, and then it just is like, okay, now we got to hunker down and stop this stuff, right? You know, so it's like crazy. It's like through the fourth issue, by the time you get there and Necron actually shows up, it's a problem, you know. And this is not one of those things too, and it's great because it's like it's one of those things where they establish early the Justice League is not coming in here and stopping this. That's not going to happen. If you think Superman's going to fly down out the sky like he did in Final Crisis, and you know he's not doing that here. Like, it's not going to happen, because this is a Green Lantern book, right?
Yeah.
You know, so they did a very good job of putting the spotlight on the Green Lanterns, and it's like, this is y'all's time to stop this, right? There's not going to be no saves out of nowhere, right? You know, so they did a really good job of establishing how that's not going to happen and explaining it in the story, you know, which was a tall feat in and of itself, right? Because I mean, you had people like, you know, Batman's gone, so it's not like, you know, he's going to figure everything out for you, you know, and stuff like that. And because you have these characters that are coming back and getting adjusted to the world, and that's kind of a plot point in the book, you know, Barry is like figuring out what's going on in the world since he's been gone, and he's kind of getting that info on the fly, right? So like he still thinks that Dick Grayson is Robin, right? That's how out of the game he is, right? So, you know, there's interesting story beats like that are going on around all of this chaos, you know what I mean? And it just makes it really, really interesting to read.
To that point, he knows Wally West has been the Flash, but still thinks Dick Grayson is Robin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Harry Allen is so smart.
But he's literally come back to life a couple of weeks ago, isn't he? You know?
True. It's true.
Yeah.
Right before, so like we're talking about how Hal Jordan isn't really in the first four issues of this book. It is focusing on these other characters. So I'm going to ask you guys what you thought of. I'm going to name a character. I'm going to ask you what you thought of this character before Blackest Night, during Blackest Night, and after Blackest Night. Did they really do anything with this character? And I'm going to start with Mara.
Okay.
So I love Mara, big Aquaman fan. Before though, they didn't really do it justice, you know? Like during the 90s, she went in some other dimension to raise a kid that we've never seen since, called AJ, who may have been Aquaman's son, but
oh my God, does it stand for Arthur Jr.?
Yeah, he's Arthur Jr. Yeah.
No,
AJ.
No, AJ.
Oh, wait a
not
minute.
Arthur Jr. So Arthur Jr. was killed, right? As a
Oh,
little
I
baby.
thought that's who you were talking about. Okay, my bad. Go ahead. Yeah.
AJ is the son of Mara, who rapidly aged. I hate rapidly aging characters in stories. Rubbish. Apart from Impulse. Anyway, raising AJ in another dimension.
That's the whole point of Impulse. He gets a pass.
Yeah, exactly. But so she was raising AJ. AJ may have been Aquaman's son, or he may have been the son of Thanatos, who was like an evil other dimensional duplicate of Aquaman, who was introduced in the 60s but came back in the 90s. So she was raising AJ in this other dimension, just basically not appearing in this film. Whenever she did turn up, she was always in like some sort of rage because she blamed Aquaman for her original son Arthur Jr. dying. And it's just a horrible comic trope, isn't it? The sort of the irrational ex-wife. It wasn't great.
Horrible, yeah.
Yeah, and let's keep in mind too that there were times when she actually tried to kill him.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She tried to assassinate him a few times.
So the way they were handling Mera in the 90s was this horrible mix of convoluted comic book bollocks and just offensive, just that perfect mix. And so they hadn't really done much with her. She kind of turned up a few times then, and they were doing a few better things with her. Like she was in Kurt Busiek's run on Aquaman that was about Arthur Joseph Curry, this younger Aquaman. And but like Geoff Johns using her in Blackest Night really brought her up a bit, really kind of set her on a level that she had never been on before. So she obviously she's not top tier, but these days I feel like she's a few tiers above what you would before. And then of course with the movies, then she's become a lot more recognizable. And I don't think she would have been as easy to use in the movies if Johns hadn't sort of elevated her a bit, given her a bit more of a backstory then in the New 52. And all that sort of, that elevating, it started in Blackest Night. So, yeah, I was really happy with how they handled Mera.
More Mera?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Because, Mera's, for the people who don't know, Mera's powers are that, she can manipulate water, right? Now, when you tell a person that, like there's like, oh, she can manipulate water. Like people don't really know the extent of that and like how powerful someone is like that. We actually get to see that here, first of all, because she's getting her money throughout the entire run of this thing, right? She becomes like one of those characters that's pushed to the front. And for the first 4 issues, she's actually pushing a lot of the action, right? So like the part where Black Lantern Aquaman shows up, but just the phrase Black Lantern Aquaman is just, and everything that goes along with that is so great. I don't know what to tell y'all, because when this man comes out, it's just crazy. But like because when in that scene, that's where her and Tempest are together, and he ends up getting killed. And then, so not only do we have Black Lantern Aquaman, we have Black Lantern Tempest with all of his other powers, right? And then you have Black Lantern, little baby Artie. You know what I mean? Like it's wild. You know what I mean? And so it's just her
too,
and Black Lantern Dolphin, right? It was like, this your husband, but I was the side piece. Like, I got him now. So what with all of that stuff.
Because Mera may have had extra joy in hitting Black Lantern Dolphin a lot.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, because I think if I'm remembering it right, like she split her head open or something. But but yeah, so, and that's one of the things too. The Black Lanterns, they try to draw emotions out of you so that they can kill you, and then that emotion from each heart that they snatch while you're feeling that emotion, it's like 0.001% or like 0.01% or something, and it powers the power battery, the Black Lantern power battery, and then once it gets to 100%, that's when Necron comes. So in that particular scene, that's what it was all about. They popped up and he was, so Aquaman is like agitating her, right? And so there's points in the story where she kind of like feels like rage, right? And stuff like that. But like a person that's a high, like they describe it really in like the Aquaman books that she's a hydrokinetic, right? So that basically that means she can manipulate water like on the molecular level. It's not just like moving water around with your hands, right? So you start to see how powerful she really is in this story. And then when you get into like the Brightest Day stuff, which is basically Aquaman Rebirth, right? So when you get into that, you get an idea of how powerful she is because she actually holds the ocean back from hitting the shore at one point. Like that's crazy. Like it takes her to her limit, but she does it, right?
Yeah.
And then when you get into the Aquaman books, she's like she's dehydrating people and taking people through the different stages of dehydration because she did it to a cop that was getting ready to take this person somewhere they didn't want to go. And so she was like, all right, let's just do it like this. Bam. You ain't had water in a day. Bam, 2 days, 3 days. You almost out of here, bro. Like, and so you just like, wow. And she don't, Atlanteans don't have that no kill moral code too. So we have to kind of remember that too, right?
Yeah.
So they don't have that. So and she definitely she made her mark known in this book, man. And she was one of the best parts of the book to me.
Yes.
So yeah, she definitely went up in the pay grades. Like I said, she wasn't like quite like A-list, but like later on in the book, her and somebody else who is A-list kind of are getting into it. But we'll talk about that later. Yeah.
There is go ahead, Paul.
I was just saying, just to, you kind of illustrate my point there, definitely about how she was elevated in a way that they could then use in the movies. Because that whole dehydrating thing, you see her use that against Steppenwolf in the Snyder Cut of Justice League. She's like stuck in the water out of his face in a really cool bit. So, could that have happened before all this happened in Blackest Night,
Yeah.
I have no idea what movie you're talking about. No clue.
Is that one of the movies that only exist in people's minds?
Yeah.
Where they think they saw it. Okay.
It exists in my mind and in my heart.
Now, listen, y'all watch what y'all want to watch, man. We just kidding. Yeah.
We're just making fun of Paul. That's it. Once again, if anybody wants to watch me and Paul debate that particular movie for an hour, which is significantly shorter than the runtime of that movie, there is a link. Go ahead. Tell us we're wrong. It doesn't matter. We've already told each other we were wrong. Okay. So we're moving up. I do think that the focus is on a few heroes who are on different tiers in terms of the A-list, B-list, C-list, etc. So we're going to move up a little bit to the next person that they spotlighted, which is Ray Palmer, the Atom, who hadn't been around for a while. He has just come back. So what happened with Ray Palmer is that in Identity Crisis, his wife was discovered to be the murderer of beloved character Sue Dibney, the elongated man's wife. And Ray Palmer disappeared for a few years until he was eventually found in a comic that nobody read called Countdown to Final Crisis. And then eventually he shows up in the final issue of Final Crisis. And then this is really where he comes back, Blackest Night. And the first thing that happens is his best friend, Hawkman, gets killed. So Ray Palmer, talk to me about Ray Palmer, the Atom.
I love Ray Palmer.
Second best Atom.
I've always loved Ray Palmer. I think he's absolutely brilliant. He's one of my faves. And I'm just a real sucker for these 1950s science communication superheroes, these atomic age science bros that came out of DC. And him and Barry are like the two main ones, I think. So yeah, I love the Atom. So it was really great seeing him get a spotlight because I think sometimes, quite often actually, you see characters getting damaged by certain storylines getting referred to and reused, and these storylines become such a huge part of their sort of myth that even though they kind of damage the character and they take the character down, you can't really get away from them. And the most obvious example of that is Hank Pym, another
Yeah.
shrinking superhero for Marvel. You know, with that whole thing where like he slapped the Wasp in the 80s, and there's just no getting away from that. To a lesser extent, I think it's happened with Ray Palmer, in that his thing has become going missing, running away. Like a really good storyline in the 80s where they didn't know what to do with the Atom. They had him run away to the jungle to become like a warrior prince amongst these 6-inch tall alien beings in the rainforest, called Sword of the Atom, and it was like a sort of sci-fi fantasy storyline. It's really good, but of course the whole thing about that is that the Atom gives up on his life and runs away to the rainforest.
The funniest thing about that is that he still wears his costume, but he's got the fantasy loincloth.
It's so cool.
That is,
I
yeah,
love it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then, of
That
course,
that whole
since then,
series is wild. Yeah.
he ran away at the end of Infinite Crisis as well. It ends with him running away because he can't deal with what his ex-wife has done, which is in itself is another example of that horrible, irrational ex-wife trope that I was talking about
Yeah.
earlier on. And then during Countdown, you had the search for Ray Palmer, where they were all looking for him and he'd run away somewhere. And then during DC Rebirth in 2016, in Steve Orlando's Justice League of America run, which is pretty good, they're looking for Ray Palmer again. There's another hunt for Ray Palmer. So Ray Palmer's thing now has become running away. So it was really great in Blackest Night to see him get like a main role where he wasn't doing this, you know, where he was one of the main superheroes stepping up, and they've not really delved much into who Ray is. So to give him such a defining trait like compassion was really powerful. I think to give like such a hardcore scientist the defining trait of compassion is quite cool as well, because when you think of scientists in comics and stories, they're always like, oh, the pursuit of science, Reed Richards, close myself off from humanity kind of people. And of course, Ray's thing has always been closing himself off from humanity by shrinking down and running away. So to have him there actually with this tremendous empathy for humanity, and perhaps putting that as the reason why he keeps running away, because he empathizes so much with other human beings and has such compassion for other human beings that it hurts him to be around people. I just thought that was such a really clever spin on it. And it's not labored too much as these being the reasons, but reading between the lines, you can definitely get that from it.
I definitely get that, because Ray Palmer, I don't think prior to this story, I ever really ascribed a personality trait to him. He's mainly science guy, which is why I said that the best Atom is Al Pratt, because he actually has a personality.
Al Pratt is great. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. No. Al Pratt is dope. I'm not arguing with that. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, it doesn't matter if I agree or disagree. I'm not going to argue with that.
What's a better superpower than just being really tough? Okay.
One of the things that he loves interacting with his students, right? And he's not just like a guy who's like writing for tenure, or, you know, he's just looking to be the top dog in academia or whatever. Like, listen, I just came from a conference where there were people running around the hotel like that, won't talk to you or anything, right? So he was different. He loves interacting with his students and he wants them to learn, and because he's planning for the future and stuff. And so like there's a bit where you know, in his office is in a petri dish, and he tells his students that, if, you know, listen, my door is unlocked in my office, the answers to the exam is on the table. If you can figure out how to get the answers off of there and read them, you could get the whole answers to the exam, right? Because for him, it's like, if you figure out how to do that, I don't care if you use the answer key and spread it around the class. I want to know how you did it, right? So he's the first one that actually was like doing that. to that degree, right? And giving him more of a personality. Because normally they would call him, he's like the floating chair at JLA, because he literally has a floating small chair. And he'll help them solve problems. And then he's like, all right, if y'all need something else, call me. And he's out, right? And I think a lot of that started with that, right? So you start to see more of kind of what he is. And, we could talk about like, identity crisis and stuff like that. As much of that book as I try to forget, the one thing that I always remember is that his reaction to like his what his wife did was just like being in so much agony that he shrunk so small that like nobody could detect him. And that was kind of like a thing, like he had never been that small before. He had never shrank like that. And just that particular scene with him doing that is almost kind of like he blinks away, right? And so that, I thought that was really a really powerful set of images, right? But it really kind of set the stage for him in this, because he's another one that, like, in the first 4 issues, it's dominated by these characters like this. And because Hal's not really in it so much. He's interacting with like some of the other like lanterns and stuff in the different corps, but that's kind of his main thing to do in the first little bit. Like he's interacting with some of the Black Lanterns, and then with Barry Allen, the two of them together, and then he's dealing with these other lanterns. But as far as like actually dealing with the actual issue, it's these other people like Mira and the Atom. And that's one of my favorite bits in comics, when the Atom jumps through the phone line. Like that's just one of my favorite visual bits, right? And I was happy that he did that in this one. Now, what he got when he got on the other end, when Black Lantern Aquaman was like, yeah, man, let's just come over, let's talk, man. Let's have a conversation. And he was like, yeah, I'll be right there. And he pops out of the phone. And the welcome wagon is there waiting for him, right? So, just that kind of stuff, man. So even though we're talking about cosmic zombies, there's still those like vintage superhero moments. And the Atom kind of delivers a lot of that. And I think it works because, like Paulie was saying, he's tied to a certain era, right?
Yeah.
So all of those little bits about, because now we have the landlines and stuff. The landlines have fiber optic cable. They don't work the same way as like, they would have 40 or even 20 years ago, right? But him doing that bit, popping up through the phone and stuff like that, because he's riding across the lines, and they actually show how it looks, because there's a part where Mira joins him, and so he was like, yeah, we just gonna hop through the phone line. And they're kind of together, and he grabs her arm, and they show like what it looks like when he's doing it. That kind of stuff is just really, really cool to me. And it's an offset to all of the cosmic zombie stuff, right? There's a bit where Mira and the Atom are actually like comparing themselves, right? And so, it's like, and when Barry and them realize like nobody's, like we got to handle this because these other people ain't coming. So, they've kind of been elevated temporarily to that top dog status. And so they're talking about Barry, and they're like, hey, and I'm paraphrasing here. It's like, okay, well, if I'm Wonder Woman, you Superman, who is he? And so Adam's like, the Flash. That's who he is. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, it's so cool, having these interactions with these characters. Like if I would have known that Mara and Ray Palmer would have been interacting like that through this thing, like I had no way of knowing that was going to happen, so it's like when you're eating French fries and you get the little gooey one down at the bottom. It was like that. You know what I mean? So
this is one of those things that is so great about serialized fiction, because you never know which dynamics are going to click. Like all of a sudden, like Mara and Ray Palmer are talking. Guarantee you, in the 60s, they never even thought about putting these two in the same comic, right? But somehow they work together really well, which brings us to the next character I want to talk about, which we may have talked about in our last video. Barry Allen has just come back. This is really his first big adventure back. What did you feel about it then? And how do you think it has aged?
I love Barry's role in this. I think he's because he's really like him and Hal are the two headline acts
Yeah.
of this event, I think. And I think because they brought Barry back, and there's a lot of Wally fans, quite rightly, because Wally's awesome. And so DC had to say, what's so good about Barry? Why Barry? So they really lay it on thick in Blackest Night, just like how great Barry is. And I think they succeed personally. I think they make a really good show of Barry, showing why he's so awesome in Blackest Night. So as a Barry fan, it was just amazing to read at the time. Just seeing Barry just being the lead character, being so bloody awesome all the way through it. Seeing the respect he got from other superheroes. I think what undermined it then was how Barry was used afterwards, because John's kind of set Barry up in this sort of elder statesman role, kind of like really like one of the top guns. And then after, not long after, like a year or two afterwards, there was Flashpoint, where Barry just screws up in a major way. And it's a great story, but I love Flashpoint, but Barry's never really recovered from that as a character. Like I was saying, these things that stick with characters, Barry's thing has become going back in time and making a mess of things, to the point where he does it on TV, he does it in the movies, he does it in like crossover events. I think he tries it in Night Terrors recently. I can't remember.
Mhm.
But, that's his thing now. So I think all the good work that happened in Blackest Night was quickly undermined. And although there have been great Flash runs since then, I don't think Barry ever really got to justify his top spot the way he did in Blackest Night
Mhm.
after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. My thing with Barry is that obviously I prefer Wally, but I understand that you want to sell, because at this point in time I kind of thought Wally's story was over,
Mm.
but you want to sell that Barry is back and you really do lay it on thick. I think it gets a little too expository at points. Like, for example, when the Atom is like, he's the Flash,
Mhm.
right? Um, so really like laying it on thick. That's fine. What oversells it for me is a little bit later on when all of the different Lantern Corps, and we'll get to this later on, all of the different Lantern Corps find a new person to represent them on Earth, and Barry is chosen as the Blue Lantern of Earth, to because he inspires great hope. There's literally a dude with hope on his chest.
What I'll say to that though is at the time it made sense, because when he came back, Barry's whole thing was not looking back, looking forward to the future, right? So then if they kept with that, and I think a lot of writers have tried, that would have worked. But like his big defining storyline after that was not him looking forward to the future. It was him literally looking back at the past and trying to change
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
From the same
So
writer.
yeah, same matter.
Mhm.
This sounds like I don't like Flashpoint, and I do. I just don't want it. It shouldn't have been as influential as it became. It should have just been a Barry story where he learns a lesson. It shouldn't have been this big defining story that changed the DC universe,
I
you know?
mean, that's fair. I feel the same way about Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah.
But we
Mhm.
can talk about if Blackest Night should have been that kind of story later on. Lamar,
Mm.
Barry Allen.
Mhm. Man, let me tell y'all about this dude, Barry Allen, man. This man, like the stuff that he was doing. And the funny thing about it, right, is that Geoff actually put in the flash fact thing, right?
Mm.
Because, for those of you who weren't reading his older comics, he's a scientist. So sometimes he talks like in science points. So there's just like these cool science facts, and when he's trying to figure things out, he talks about them. There's a scene in here where he does that when he's fighting, of all people, the Black Lantern Martian Manhunter, and he's fighting him solo, right?
Yeah.
And so he starts talking about how to basically make a fire and how to pull the and how to stop a fire. And this is after he literally wrapped this dude in a fire tornado, right? Because like, remember, he's out the game, so he doesn't know that the Martian Manhunter, like, that whole thing about the fire, right? Y'all know that. So what happens is he comes back and he's fighting him and outpacing him and everything. And that panel where Martian Manhunter is trying to shoot him with his Martian vision, and Barry's like moving faster than his eyesight can pace him, and then he kind of cuts the corner. It's all in one panel, but the way Ivan Reis drew that is just like, it's breathtaking. Like the first time I read that, I was looking at it and I got stuck looking at it. But with that, he's doing the whole flash fact thing and all of these Barry things, like where he twirls his arms and makes the whirlwinds and people go flying. He's doing that and knocking Black Lanterns everywhere and stuff like that. And because we got to remember in Final Crisis, to speak to what Paulie was saying about him being defined by this like massive failure. Remember, he had a failure in Final Crisis because he was trying to catch the bullet and him and Wally couldn't catch it. Remember?
That's true.
So yeah, so that was a little different, right? Because you could look at that and say, well, that was just meant to happen, right? Because he tried to grab for it, they missed it, and they couldn't catch it. And so then Orion ended up getting killed, and it created this thing, and the problem just kind of worked itself out, right? But with Flashpoint, right, he didn't get an opportunity to do that because of corporate stuff, right? Because it should have been the same kind of story where it wrapped up, and then that was just the lesson he learned, like Paulie said, and then you go to the next thing, right? Which is what it was supposed to be intentional with, originally, right? It was supposed to be that, and then there was supposed to be some other stuff that happened that we never got to see, and as a result of that, Barry kind of has this bad rap for not being a closer, right? Like, and that's the funny thing, because Barry has always been one of the best clutch people, because like he'll come through in a minute and be like, oh, well, y'all got to do it like this, bam, and then it's like, well, dang, where was you at 10 minutes ago? So now he don't have a representation, to use a basketball terminology, for being clutch, right? But he's always been that. So, but in this book though, when they get to that point, and there's something else that happens too, when the power battery gets to be 100% and it moves from sector 666 and drops on Earth, and then Necron comes up, Barry is the one who feels it happening, and he goes to where it's happening, and this is like for the first time where he gets stopped in his tracks in the story, because he's all over the place. So, and he's there by himself while it's happening, right? And so Necron's coming up out of the ground, and then the only thing he could think to say is like, Hal, where the hell are you? Like, I don't know what's going on here, man. You got to talk to me. So, but the reason why that is because he was the first major hero like that to die, and he was the last one to come back, right? So because of that, he had like this crazy connection to like everything that was happening. So there were certain things that he could feel that other people couldn't feel. I thought that was a really good way of kind of driving everything home too, with this this revolving door of death thing that tends to happen, right? Like in comics or whatever. So but yeah, and also later we get that interplay between him and Wally.
Yeah.
And because for me, the more flashes the better. That's how I feel about it, right? I don't pick and choose. But the thing about it is like, and which is cool, because Wally's actually wearing the Flash costume from the TV show. You know what I mean? And I wish they would have stuck with that, because I just love seeing that in the comics. It was great. But so basically,
to be clearer, what Wally's costume was post Barry's return is a mixing of all of his previous costumes.
All of his costumes, yeah.
He's got the darker red from the Wade run. He's got the And also from the TV show, he's got the Batman eyes.
Yeah.
From the that was from the Wade run, right? Yeah, the Wade run.
Yeah, yeah.
And the two the lightning bolt that only has two streaks.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
from Justice League Unlimited.
Yeah.
I will say that there is something about the coloring in this book that makes it's easy to tell them apart,
Yeah.
but it's not as easy as it was in the 90s during the return of Barry Allen, and I'm not really sure why that is.
You know what I think it is?
Yeah.
It's because this suit don't have a sheen on it. You know, like his suit, like when he came back and it was like the TV show costume, you know, it had kind of like that shine to it when they would do it. You know, he doesn't really have that. It's more muted, right?
Yeah, so it's just a darker red.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a darker red without the sheen on it, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of like a burgundy or something, kind of. But
that's too bad. They should have stuck with a sheen.
Yeah. But yeah, you know. But yeah, just the mashup of all of those costumes that he had. You know, it was just dope. But yeah, the interaction between the two of them, and you know, and so, you know, he's like, well, man, you know, if you're back and you're the Flash, who am I? He was like, you're the Flash. Like, what are you talking about? Right? So
you're actually faster than I am.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, but the coolest thing, or one of the coolest things Barry did in this joint, is when the Black Lantern power ring started chasing him and Hal.
Yeah, I was going to mention this. Yeah, this is one of the most badass moments in the book.
Yeah, you go ahead and do it. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things is that the Black Lantern rings go to the dead people, but eventually they start being able to control the people who had been dead. So that includes Superman, Wonder Woman, Bart Allen, Superboy, whoever the hell this Batman was. I don't remember. It wasn't Bruce Wayne. And so it starts chasing Hal and Barry. And Hal is like, oh my God, those rings are fast. And Barry's just like, yeah, I'm faster. Until the rings just give up and stop chasing them. It's pretty cool.
It was wild because when and it was funny because he's basically like grabbed Hal by his arm. He's like, man, come on, man. So, and it's like, you know, this dude can fly, right? But the thing about it, that's cool, because when Hal's looking at him, is like, how the world did you do that? He was like, man, listen, I traveled 2 seconds into the future, broke the connection, bam. He was like, easy. You know what I mean? Like you know, and it's like, man, who else but him would think of that, right? So, you know, I just think that, you know, like little things like that are, you know, to show how, you know, his value as a character, right? And so if you look at the Flashes, I tend to look at them as like, metaphorically speaking, as a toolbox. So for me, it's like, which one is better for this particular situation, right? So
Wally is your nuclear bomb.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like if you can't make rhyme or reason, you just need to blow everybody up. He's the guy, right?
Everybody else can vibrate through stuff. Wally can do it, but it will explode.
Yep. Yeah, that's just how it is. If you need the method, the slow method approach, and you want to work things out, figure things out, Barry's you do. But if you need somebody taken out quick, that's Jay, right? That's just his thing, because he's the best fighter out of all of them.
He is,
right? Yeah. So I kind of feel like if it was a death match between the three of them, that Wally and Barry would be like, we got to take this dude out first. We'll figure our stuff out later, but we got to get him out of here, you know?
In the big development in Blackest Night, what we have are the different rings going to different people on Earth. So we've already mentioned Hal Jordan is the Green Lantern. The blue ring, Hope, picks Barry Allen. The indigo ring of Compassion goes to Ray Palmer, the Atom. The red ring of Rage, I'm waiting for Paul to show it, goes to Mara. So those are our stars, right? Those are the stars of the book. So really quickly, tell me what you think of those choices, followed by these choices. Wonder Woman gets purple, the star shows, she becomes a star sapphire. And this is like moments after she and Mara are yelling at each other. Scarecrow, Jonathan Crane, obviously, it has the ability to instill great fear and is therefore a Sinestro. And the Orange Lantern is Lex Luthor. By the way, apropos of nothing, I do think it is really, really accurate that greed is orange, and I will leave it at that.
Oh, I just got that. Yeah. So I don't know how I feel about Mera getting red because again, it feeds into these negative portrayals of it from the 90s as this sort of angry, insane with grief ex-wife, you know? But you did get to see her like fight Wonder Woman, which was pretty cool.
And you know the cool thing about that too, that's what I was actually talking about earlier, is
Yeah.
because when she's fighting Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman's like, you really think you can beat me? And she was like, I always wanted to find out. So
Yeah.
that's when it's like, oh wow, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I
Yeah.
will say she does not have the red ring when she's fighting Wonder Woman.
No, she don't. Yeah.
That's
That's
true.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah.
So
The two rings get to them at the same time.
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm not sure. I like it because it gives it a role in the story and it gives it a prominent role in the story. But I don't like what it says about. I don't like that it is consistent with her character because it's only consistent with her character because she's been used really badly so much.
Mhm.
You don't
Um,
like that it's consistent with her character, which means that you just don't like this aspect of her character.
I don't like how this aspect of her character has been used, you know?
Okay, yeah.
Like, yeah. Um, so yeah, but it's used fine here. It's good. You know, her role in this story is great. Um, I've said what I think about Ray getting compassion. I really like that. Um, Luther getting greed is amazing because he tries to hide that aspect of his personality from himself, like
Mhm.
his motives for not liking Superman. He's always going on about how, like, oh, it's about humanity's potential and all this. But he's jealous and he's greedy. You know, it's
Yeah,
the
he's
sort of
lying.
base thing. Yeah, he's lying. He's lying to himself, like, you know, and this puts all that on show. You know, so you know that deep down Luther hates this. Like, you
Mhm.
know. And you know, that's the great thing about Luther is that Superman thinks deep down everyone is good, and Luther thinks deep down everyone's as bad as he is.
Yeah.
So they're never going to get on because they're always clashing with each other, and this kind of proves Superman right. Well, rather, it proves himself right about himself. That you know all these sort of ugly aspects of
Mhm.
himself are suddenly on the surface, like you know. So in a way, it proves him right and Superman wrong, but but I still think he hates it. Who else is there? Wonder Woman love?
Wonder
Yeah,
Woman is
quite.
love, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
And Scarecrow. I mean, I'm not a huge Scarecrow fan, but it so I'm not. I can take or leave him being in this story, but
It's
it
all
does make
it's
sense.
obvious, yeah, it's the obvious choice.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And Barry as Hope.
Barriers Hope. At the time, it made sense. It wouldn't make sense now, but it did at the time.
Lamar?
Um, let's see. Wait, which one you want me to start with?
Mara as Ridge.
Mirror's Rage. Yeah. Um, historically speaking, I could see why that would make sense because um like what we were talking about, there was a part of her character for a while that she was prone to that. I mean, she projected these things onto her husband and tried to kill him several times, not just once, right? And they had to work through that. I mean, can you imagine going to couples therapy for that? Because you're you got superpowers and your superpowered wife is trying to kill you, and she's actually powerful enough to succeed at it, you know? So, but I think at that particular time, they were actually working that way in the story. And, you could kind of see it because I think a lot of what she was feeling was coming from losing her family, right? So, I mean, hey, if it worked for the Punisher, it can work for her, right? But so yeah, I think in that instance, I think that she was a good choice.
What about Ray Palmer as Indigo, Compassion?
Something interesting happened that I wanted to touch on with that. The Indigo Lanterns are the ones who figure out that if you combine willpower with another light, that you can kill the Black Lanterns. But Ray was already working towards that because you remember whenever he goes through the phone line and Hawkman and then was trying to kill him. And so in the fight, he just decided, he noticed that he was wearing a ring. And remember, he shrunk down into the ring to examine it. And that's when he figured out, it's like, man, this ring it's made of this stuff. It's kind of like bones. And it seems to be like this universal type material. And it's got all these wormholes in it that are pushing this energy that they're collecting and is pushing it to this place. And I don't know where it's going. And then, he comes back out of the ring with his classic thing, shrinking and hitting people, which was dope too. And so he was already on the way to figuring it out, but they were the ones who actually implemented it, right? So there probably was some kind of like foreshadowing there. And then, and then they explain it, by talking about what we were talking about earlier, how whenever things get to be too much for him, he shrinks down to the subatomic level. And that's kind of his thing because, as a matter of fact, like the quote is that she says that I can sense your empathy for others. You have spent much of your life in subatomic isolation in an attempt to unlock the secrets of the universe for the benefit of mankind. And our light desires to heal you. Because that's one of the powers that the indigo light has, is that it can heal people. And so, yeah, because he really got his behind whooped by the by the Hawks. You know what I mean? So she fixed him up. And so I think that was kind of, I can dig that. I can dig that.
Barry as Hope.
Yeah, I'm with Paulie on that one. During that particular time, it worked, but like over time, but I also think too that decision was probably because, they didn't want Superman coming in with the big save. So he was kind of relegated to like the background characters who were just kind of like, you know, you know, just shooting the guns to try to keep them back a little bit, you know. In this story, I think that's probably where he should have been, you know.
Notably, this is one of those events where Superman or Batman don't save the day.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We should have more of those.
Right. I agree.
Also,
I agree.
I think it would have been wrong for both Superman and Luthor to have been in this lineup.
Yeah.
Just because that's just too much exposure from one side of that particular universe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Luthor as Greed.
Oh, listen, that's 100. Like, I mean, come on, man. Like that's the one that you're like, if you're gonna give it to somebody, there's nobody else you could give it to but him. Like, it would be a travesty if you didn't. And it doesn't matter what era we're talking about, it still applies, right?
Wonder Woman as Love. Before you say anything, I will say that I guess I'm surprised that they went with someone as big as Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
For this choice. I feel like they could have gone, I don't know who, but I feel like they could have used this to build up somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, she makes as much sense as Love as Superman would have as Hope. But
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I am surprised that they went with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Wonder Woman is Love.
Yeah, I'm with it. I mean, because she has that whole thing where she literally comes from the earth, and so like her whole reason for coming out and being a superhero was, because of she wanted to, help the whole world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she could have stayed on the island, and you remember, there was like that back and forth about, man, you really ain't got to do this. Let them people solve their own problems and stuff. And she was like, nah, this is what I'm doing, So I could see that definitely being the case. And like just the connection that she has to nature where, she can deal with animals and do all of that other kind of stuff that they don't usually show her doing that, especially, like subsequently, they kind of got away from that. But yeah, at the time that made sense.
And finally, Scarecrow as a Sinestro.
You know, one thing about it, like you said, he's the obvious choice. I mean, he has the word scare in his name, but just the visual alone is worth it.
Mm.
Just the visual of
Okay.
Scarecrow with like a yellow power ring. I could dig that because it's not permanent, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, and that's the other thing too, right? So it's like, nah, we just need y'all to get it in real quick, and then that's it. So, yeah, so it's like, who else do you give it to? I mean, they've already given it to Batman, and he actually uses willpower to override it. So, because it's been established that those yellow rings actually control you, right?
Yes.
Because it's Sinestro doing it. Like, you know what I mean? It's him doing it. So, he's the only one who is not controlled by the ring, but everybody else is. So, once Batman sensed that, it was like, he probably was like, nah, that's it, I'm good. But, with him, it's a no-brainer. Yeah.
Scarecrow is the one choice where I'm like, I feel like we could have tried harder with this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like we went with the most obvious choice, and like, I mean, I'm not really complaining because it was such an obvious choice, but I'm like, I feel like given this lineup, we could have tried a little harder to pick somebody that people cared more about than Scarecrow. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know who, but that's it.
Oh, it's like if you got the Joker, for example, he dominates everything then,
That's
doesn't he?
true. Yeah,
And it becomes about him.
it's
It's
too
his
much.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too
Yeah.
Yeah.
much.
It's his story at that point. Yeah.
Green Lantern villains, Hal Jordan's villains are in an interesting spot compared to the other villains because Hal Jordan disappeared in like 1992,
Mm-hmm.
right? He became Parallax, and then Kyle Rayner took over. So that entire stretch from 1986, when Hal wasn't even really Green Lantern, what Hal Jordan became Green Lantern again in what, 89? Right,
Mm-hmm.
Something
89,
like that.
Yeah, it
like
was
something
like
like 89 to
some
92.
yeah, it was something
So
like that. Yeah.
so his villains did not go through that whole like grim and gritty phase that everybody else did
Yeah.
in the
Right.
80s.
Yeah.
And then he
Uh-huh.
was only around for 3 years until he was replaced by Kyle Rayner. And then Kyle has his own set of villains. So Hal Jordan's villains are in an interesting space where they were in that primarily goofy era of the 60, 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now they're in the Geoff Johns world. So
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, Black Hand is this. Black Hand has only ever been a goofy villain who likes puns, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then all of a sudden now he's like this super serious necrophiliac.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Putting it
um,
mildly. Yeah.
putting it mildly, and
Yeah.
then Necron shows up. Talk to me about how you feel like this built up Hal Jordan's Rogues Gallery, because we also see all of his other villains, Atrocitus, Sinestro, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely necessary. I mean, Black Ant's been made so much better by this event, because he was the kind of villain that Marvel have got a lot of, where you just someone that Spider-Man webs up at the start of the story, someone who gets killed off and replaced by someone who's kind of identical to him in personality, but the same costume. That's kind of the space Black Hand was in before, of these kind of replaceable villains. And Johns kind of took him and made, no, this is who William Hand or whatever his name is. This is who he is. This is why he does what he does.
Mm-hmm.
It involves wanting to have sex with dead bodies. Okay. But in the context of this story, it really, really worked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I really loved what they did with him. I'd love to see like Hal's villains, other villains, get like really good revamps, like Evil Star. Is anyone doing anything with Evil Star? I think he's cool. And obviously, like you say, Sinestro, he was killed by Hal in the early 90s, so he didn't really, nobody really did anything with him until this run.
Right.
And that they've made Sinestro now one of the big hitters. He's one of the main villains of the DC universe because of this run.
Yeah, no question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do love that there is a contingent of people who believe that Sinestro can be a redeemable anti-hero because his name is Sinestro.
He's got the mustache, he's never
No,
been.
yeah, he's way too far gone for that, bro.
He's got the Dick Dastardly mustache. It's gone, guys. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Okay, Lamar, the Rogues, Hal Jordan's Rogues.
I think that, what you were saying about how like his rogues gallery was kind of stuck in that certain period. And I do think that when he comes back, like in Rebirth and all of that, I think, his subsequent Green Lantern run, I think it actually makes the transition more smooth because he doesn't have that, right? Because you got to remember he was the gritty guy, right? Because remember, he went crazy and and he got possessed by Parallax and he went and did all his wild stuff. So, and then he would show up subsequently in certain events as the villain, right? So then, he ends up becoming a Spectre, right? And you guys know that Paulie, I know you know this, that the idea for him becoming a Spectre came from the DC Comics message board.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, like because those the guys, DC guys were reading that. They were reading the board, and I'm pretty sure, I even think Geoff Johns might have said that that's where it came from.
Wow.
But yeah, but like with his villains, and because it's like, how do you give villains to a guy that can literally go anywhere in the universe, right? As his job, right? And so obviously you're going to have like more street level characters comparatively, right? Like how you were talking about like Black Hand, he's basically was a street level character. I mean, he wasn't much of a physical threat. His whole thing was his weapon that he had that could suck the power out of the juice out of the ring and everything, and then he could use that as his weapon, but if once Hal got that away from him, I mean, he was, he was a nobody, right? No physical threat whatsoever. But you talk about like the upgrade of the year. Like you go from being that to being the avatar for the Black Lantern power ring and stuff like that. Like that's crazy, right? But he was really the only person to do that with. I mean, who else are you going to do that with? So, but yeah, like Dewey was saying about the necrophiliac, I mean, there's a scene in the Green Lantern comics where they're going through his origin story and stuff. And he says that his first kiss was from a dead body. And there's like a scene where like these Black Lanterns are running past him and he's kind of running his hands across them and stuff. And the black goo is coming off his fingers and it looks like he's having a what while that's happening, so it's kind of wild. But I think that I was like, okay, if you go any further than this, it's going to be an issue. But they stayed right there. But yeah, his villains, a lot of them, because they're stuck in that era and they were created in that era. Because a lot of people got new heroes like in that era you were talking about. They got new villains rather in that era.
Yeah.
But he didn't really get that. And I think it kind of helped because I kind of feel like if he would have had them, that would have just been more people that they would have had to have killed, right? So because a lot of these people's villains didn't make it out of that era, right? Like a lot of them are gone now. So yeah, I think it actually helped because like his villains, because like they're cosmic level, like Sinestro and stuff like that, he doesn't need a whole bunch of like big villains like that. Like Sinestro was enough, right? And going back to the DC message board thing, like after all of this is over, when Geoff Johns ends his run, it's revealed that Sinestro, like whenever him and Parallax interact, he's not being possessed by Parallax. Parallax is being possessed by him.
Yeah.
Right. So y'all probably got me to thank for that because 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 I said that on the message board. I was like, when they end this thing, they have to end it that way, right? So y'all are welcome if you dig that. But but yeah, Sinestro gets, man, in that Green Lantern book, Sinestro versus Mongul. Oh my gosh, man. I just was like, man, this dude, because remember that was the whole thing, that Mongul becomes a Yellow Lantern, and then he stages a takeover, right? And so, he takes down Sinestro, and then Sinestro was like, man, I let you do that, right? Because I got to keep these people in line. So I let you do it and hear what I'm doing, and then drop the battery on him. I was like, man, this dude here is crazy. And then shut off his ring. And he was like, you really think I'd let you have something I couldn't control? Like, are you crazy? I knew who you were before you came here.
Wow, like so many Superman villains have just gone over to Green Lantern, huh?
A lot
Now
of
that I
them
think.
have. Yeah. Yeah. Hank Henshaw was remember he was the Yellow Lantern. He had a bunch of rings,
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
Superboy
Yeah.
Prime,
Superboy Prime. Yep.
Mongol. Huh.
Yep. It was quite a few of them. And I loved every minute of it. I ain't gonna lie to you, Yeah, but yeah, that Sinestro was a bad boy, man. I'm trying to tell you. And then the funny thing about it, that run where he becomes a Green Lantern again, and then he has these random encounters, like with Yellow Lanterns and stuff. And then they're like, hey, Sinestro, wait a minute. You mean to tell me you're a Green Lantern now? Bam.
Yeah.
Dead. Every time he encounters one before the comic book is over, he encounters one. It's like, yeah, you done. So, yeah, he's just a bad dude, man. Like, so I can see why. And he actually shows why he's a bad dude in this, in a couple of different ways. In the main book too, he shows you that.
Talk to me
Yeah.
about that fact. The fact that the way to beat the Black Lanterns is to harness this white light, and Sinestro makes sure he is the guy who holds it.
Yeah, because Hal's flying for it, isn't he? And Sinestro's like, get
Yeah.
out of the
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
way. Mine.
Yeah, he's like, nah, this you had your chance. Because in the Green Lantern book, Hal allowed Parallax to possess him, to beat the Black Lantern Spectre of all things, right? And he was like, yeah, you had your chance, bro. Nah, this is all me, you know. Yeah, so of course he would say that. I mean, why wouldn't he? I don't think I saw it coming as him being the White Lantern,
Yeah.
like that, but it's definitely on brand for him. There's no question about it, you know.
Going through this, I'm getting, I'm flipping through the book, and I am getting to the climax. I'm going to make one big statement, which is, this is Kyle Rayner's worst costume.
Oh, the one he has on in this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like
it's not even anything.
Yeah, it's like, dude, it's funny because it's like a burner costume, like where your costume was in the cleaners, and it's like, man, I gotta put this thing on, and it's like, oh, my real stuff is getting washed right now. You know what I mean? It's
Everyone else has some kind of like pretty cool variant on the Green Lantern uniform. He has his regular crab mask and what looks like a variant of a T-shirt with a Green Lantern symbol on it. So we're here now, and then they manage to all harness the white light, like all of them.
Yeah,
they all become the White Lantern Corps, and people start getting brought back to life, including the Black Hand and the Anti-Monitor and Dead Man, Professor Zoom, the Reverse Flash, Maxwell Lord, Digger Harkness, the original Captain Boomerang, Ronnie Raymond, and Jenny Lynn Hayden, Jade, Hawkman and Hawkgirl, Osiris, and of course Aquaman and the Martian Manhunter. One of the goals of any event is to set up the future. So but also to kind of fix the mistakes of the past. So which ones of these guys and which one of these intrigued you at the time? Which ones do you think that the returns were properly handled? Which ones were exciting? And do you think they should have also brought back Ralph and Sue?
I was really intrigued by Firestorm at the time. I think Jason and Ronnie are a really good pairing as Firestorm, and that dynamic that zombie Ronnie had killed Jason's girlfriend.
Yeah.
That was an interesting dynamic, and just the jock and the nerd combined together to become a superhero, I think is a really good idea, and I prefer that to Ronnie and Martin Stein, and they've just failed to live up to the potential of that combination ever since Johns gave it to them at the end there. Like in the New 52, for some reason, they were two separate characters and occasionally they combined to make a big monster or something. And then Martin Stein got brought back, and we've never really got to see the potential of Ronnie and Jason as Firestorm, I feel.
Yeah.
But I was really intrigued.
Additionally, we said the same thing about Firestorm when we did Doomsday Clock. So Geoff just really likes Firestorm, but
Yeah.
and likes to set him up for stuff, but no one really does things with what he sets up for Firestorm.
No,
Yeah.
nothing memorable anyway.
Yeah.
So I was really disappointed by that. Obviously, I was thrilled that Aquaman was back. Two hands he had. This was the first time Aquaman has had two hands since 1994, which is pretty huge. Except in Brightest Day, he gets one of them chopped off. But that doesn't last very long. I was absolutely thrilled that Aquaman was back. I liked that Hawkman was back. I don't really know why Shayera got to come back and not Kendra. I feel like Kendra had more potential, and you'll notice now since DC Rebirth, Kendra's the one they've been using.
Yeah.
And then of course at the end of Brightest Day, they just turned Shayera into a big fart anyway. Like, they only used her for a year.
Well, what I would say about that is that I prefer Kendra to Shayera. In the comics, I prefer Kendra to Shayera, and I would have rather that she stayed Kendra. But the whole thing about Kendra not remembering who she was, I realized eventually that was Geoff Johns' story to begin with. JSA, and I kind of felt like it was his story to end, and he chooses to end it here. I don't really know what makes this the perfect point to end that story, but okay, I guess it's dragged out long enough that she can't remember who Hawkman is, right?
But I didn't like it as an ending for his story, because their whole thing is like, I'm not a slave to destiny. I'm my own person. I'm not going to. You're not entitled to my love, Hawkman, just because something I did in a past life or wherever. And then like at the start of Blackest Night, she's like, oh, actually I do love you, and actually at the end of this story I'm going to take a step back to a previous persona. I don't know, it wasn't very satisfying to me, and I'm glad that they brought Kendra back as very much her own thing since DC Rebirth.
Yeah, Lamar, where do you stand on that?
About that, or just about the resurrections in general?
About Shayera / Kendra first.
Okay. All right. For me, I could take it or leave it with either one. It's just in how they handle it, right? Like since they went with Shayera, if Kendra would have like popped up later, like let's say they used that to start like the new Hawkman book, right? And they're in the book together or whatever. If Kendra pops up later or something like that, and they do it like that, I'm cool with it, right? But I think like long term, I didn't like the way it was handled. And a lot of that, probably being honest with you, is just like editorial stuff, which seems to always get in the way with people doing things. But it's like you said, that's like the issue with like Firestorm, like you guys are talking about, that you know, once Geoff Johns left, left the book, wasn't writing the character anymore, they were just kind of like, okay, what do we do? It's like, you go with what was working. How about that? Right. So, because the book was, it was great. I like that dynamic. I mean, I love the classic dynamic with Stein, but, I like that too, you know, because, you know, Firestorm and what's my man name? Jason. They have more in common, right? And I think that was a part of the dynamic. They're more alike than they like to make it seem like sometimes. So, but with the Hawkman and the Hawkgirl dynamic, I just think the way it was handled subsequently was what I had the problem with. Not so much that Shayera came back. It was just that there was a lot of possibilities and we never got to see what happened,
Yeah, I do feel that at the start of the story, Kate, Carter, and Kendra were killed just so we could get this moment where Shayera comes back. Because why kill them here? And just to bring them back at the end of the story, right?
They were actually killed at the end of Final Crisis, and but it's done in such a way where they kind of say their goodbyes to each other, and then I think there's a white light or something. So it was very easy for Geoff Johns to pretend that never happened.
It's easy to pretend it happened.
Hey Lamar, talk about some of the other characters. Which ones did you look forward to at the time, like seeing more of? And then do you think that was delivered on the promise?
Well, I'll say that first of all, I'll say this, that Martian Manhunter, Firestorm, Aquaman, and the Hawk should have never been killed to start with. That's just my official position on that. I mean,
the Hawks are always killed.
I mean, they're always killed, right? So you kind of know that, right? But I just kind of feel like, I mean, obviously, when they got killed in the beginning, I was like, yeah, they'll be back at the end. They'll be back in some kind of way, because that's kind of what they do.
Yeah,
that's what they do. But the dead man thing was the one that really caught my attention. Because he's never been alive, right? Because that's kind of his thing. So I'm like, okay, well, what are they going to do? And I thought they did really good work with him in Brightest Day. Yeah, I've always liked him because I just always loved his look. And those Neil Adams comics are fantastic. If you've never read them, please go read them. And I had a new appreciation for him after this, and Professor Zoom, obviously, because I'm a Flash fan, so of course you want him back. That goes double for Captain Boomerang, right?
I do love how Barry gets a whole rebirth thing, and just because he has a rebirth thing, it's like, oh yeah, Zoom is back.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, because if you're doing that, you got to go all the way May with it. You know what I mean? You got to have him on the table. Hawk, I'm glad Hawk came back because I've always loved Hawk and Dove, and I also like the fact that Don Hall didn't come back because they were he died in peace, so the Green Lanterns couldn't affect him. I thought that was cool, and they kept sending the Black Lantern rings at him. You know what I mean? And I thought that was cool. And the new Dove put in work in this joint. She was literally just walking around killing them, right? I thought that was dope. That was a good dynamic. The Maxwell Lord thing, I could take it or leave it. I'm pretty ambivalent to it. I was also pretty ambivalent to the Osiris thing, because even though I love, and I don't know if this is just me or not, but I love Captain Marvel, I love Black Adam, but his family, I just never really attached to them. You know what I mean?
No,
yeah.
We really should do a video on 52 at some point. But,
yeah.
Long story short, for me, when it comes to the Black Adam's much more interesting when he's alone.
Yeah, I agree.
Not as a member of a family, and you can really tell that they just really like that show in the 70s, ISIS.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to bring her in, but Osiris in particular is just annoying.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I'm every time I read him, I'm like, dog, why this comic would be better like with you not being in it. Like if it was your origin story, it would be better if you wasn't in it, right? Like that's just how I feel about him, right?
That's
And
true. That's true.
that's not to step on nobody else's toes that love him or nothing. I'm just saying that's just, I don't have to eat the same cookies everybody else do. But
He's there as a plot device for Black Adam. And
yeah,
once
yeah,
once that's done, it's done.
And
yeah.
that moment in 52 where he's eaten by the crocodile,
Yeah,
that's so great.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll give you that. Yeah,
that
that
was
was his
You
great.
know,
finest hour. That was his finest hour, getting eaten by that crocodile. Yeah. So I do think that bringing back Ralph and Sue, that's the one I look forward to. But I knew I wasn't going to get it. Somehow I knew that, right? Because when I saw the other people that got brought back, somehow I knew, nah, they're not going to give me all of this. But just to have that moment where, Barry Allen's looking for him and then Hal's like they're not here, you know. Because we imagine like all of this stuff is happening in this big puff of white smoke, right?
Yeah.
So people are just kind of stepping in and out of the smoke and stuff. But yeah, I do but once again, none of that stuff with them should have ever happened, right?
No.
So yeah, just off GP, they should have never been killed to start with. So yeah, and the other stuff that happened subsequently, and everything, none of that should have happened in that story. I'm not going to mention the name of, but yeah, they definitely should have been brought back because they never should have been killed to start with. Even though I do have to say that Ralph went out like a G. I got to give him that. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that last
yeah,
Ralph story is so
yeah.
great.
That last, yeah, I feel the same way about him that I feel about Ted Cord,
Yeah.
they kind of went out hard, but yeah.
If I
Yeah, go ahead.
No, so I'll just say, going off on a little tangent, like the way everyone's resurrected in this story is really cool because it's the climax to Blackest Night,
Mm-hmm.
But the problem I've got with how they eventually bring back Ralph and Sue, and funnily enough, how they bring back Ted Cord and how they bring back Tempest, Garth, is that it happened as part of the New 52 DC Rebirth shenanigans. So they didn't get their resurrection moment. They
No, they were just alive again.
Yeah, they just
Mm-hmm.
started appearing in the background of panels, and it really sucks that they brought these characters back and didn't make a big deal out of it.
Dude, I have a friend whose first comics that he ever bought were Blackest Night, and he was so invested in it and all of that, and that New 52 immediately drove him out.
Wow.
Because he felt that because he was just getting, you know how it is when you're a new fan, like you are invested in a universe, and all of a sudden you're being told that the stuff you just read doesn't actually matter.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And none of us here are like complete adherence to continuity, but I do get that.
I definitely get that. Yeah. That's an interesting perspective though, because this happens, like this whole thing is going on like from 2009 into like 2010. And then after that, there's a little bit of a break because they're doing the Brightest Day. Because Geoff Johns was like, I gotta give Ivan a break, man, because he just did all of this. He put in the performance of his career. I gotta give him a break. And then we're gonna jump into the next thing. So, and then as soon as that next thing was over, like everything is done, right? So I can understand that, especially when you've only been reading comics for like maybe 2 years, right? Absolutely. You know what I mean? Like I get that. Like I can understand that. That's something that I'm glad I never have to experience, because I mean we all kind of got started in our younger days, but yeah, no, I can definitely see that as being something to be like, man, just forget it,
Because you've got to tell. Oh, God, I just say that you've got to tell people why we should care about these characters, and that's what's so great about Blackest Night is that it's telling us why we should care about Barry, right? Because he's just come back from the dead. There's a whole generation of readers who aren't really familiar with him. So this story is like, Barry is cool. This is why I think Barry is cool. And you see it all laid out. And then you've got a bunch of characters now, a whole handful of characters like Ralph and Sue, Like, and I am going to bang on about him because I like him. Like Tempest, like Garth, I think Garth is a great character. And you've got a whole generation of characters, of readers who've grown up without these characters being justified to them. They've just come back from the dead, and we've not been told why they should have been brought back from the dead. We've not been told what the point of them is. So they're all just kind of been gradually relegated to background characters. And it's such a shame
It
because
is.
they're so great, these characters. Like, Ralph and Sue and Garth, they're the ones I'm focusing on, but there's a bunch more. Who Ted Cord, Ted Cord's been brought back, but nobody has told us why Ted is great. Um,
Right. Yeah. Like, honestly, guys, do you know how cool Firestorm is? Firestorm
yeah,
is so cool. Okay.
yeah,
Like,
Mhm.
he's so cool that he was one of the last members of the Justice League before it all got blown up by Justice League Detroit and stuff. Right. And he was so cool that I think the expression back then was that for a DC guy, he looked like a Marvel character. I feel like
Mhm.
it was a backhanded compliment, but you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
he had like such an unorthodox design, and he's got really cool powers. Firestorm is so cool. Geoff gets it, and apparently, I think people like Gail Simone have tried, etc. But I really do think that this character is just like a victim of a lot of editorial shenanigans
mm.
because at any given moment you don't even know who's in Firestorm, right? So, and that's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
an example of
yeah,
these characters. Hawkman is so cool.
yeah,
Hawkman and Hawkgirl are so cool.
yeah.
And don't get me started on Hawkman and the mess he's in. Before we wrap up Blackest Night itself, do you guys want to give a few words about the spin-offs and the tie-in books? So I will start. There is a tie-in book on Starman, the 81st issue, where Jack Knight's brother David Knight becomes a Black Lantern and
Mhm.
attacks Opal City and has to fight the Shade, and it is awesome.
So of course you would mention that one.
So, like that whole gimmick of giving council titles one last issue,
One
that was
last
a great
issue,
gimmick. Yeah.
yeah, where people just come back as a Black Lantern. Yeah. Anyway,
Hmm.
any other tie-ins you guys wanted to spotlight?
Something we did mention when we were talking about the Rogues Gallery of Green Lantern was that in the Green Lantern run that was building up to Black Knight, Hector Hammond got made really cool. And I think that's worth
Yeah.
mentioning just because we were talking about
Hmm.
Green Lantern's Rogues Gallery. He didn't feature in Blackest Night, but he got a real sort of he got bumped up a few notches, I think, by this run as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I really enjoyed the Superman tie-in with this because, like you said, he didn't appear in this much, and he was actually on New Krypton at the time as well.
Hmm.
So the Superman tie-in with this, where he fights Earth 2 Superman, was really cool as well. I enjoyed that. Um, yeah, that's all that really stands out about it. What about you, Lamar?
Um, yeah, the Superman stuff was great. The Wonder Woman one was really good. I enjoyed that. That and then what was the other one? The other ones that I liked, the Batman one was good too, with Damian as Robin and Dick Grayson as Batman. That was really good. I was surprised at how good that one was. But just to see Commissioner Gordon getting busy with that shotgun, you know. Yeah, but because like he shot him and didn't reload. I mean, like he bucked him all the way down to the feet and they popped back up. But there were some other tie-ins where they brought like books back,
Mm,
like All-Star Western.
Yeah,
They
yeah, yeah,
brought it
yeah,
back
yeah.
just for this. That was a good one. And the Hawkman and the Atom, they brought that book back and they got more into what was happening, with them and everything. the Question book was good. Yes, that was so good. That was so good, man. Um, and I think most of those were good, like the ones they brought back just for that. Most of those were good.
Yeah, well, I think that the ones that they brought back
Yeah.
were better by and large than the ones that existed. But I think Paul was about to say something.
Yeah.
Well, I just think Blackest Night, it's a gold standard event for me. Like, this is how comics events should be made, I think. It's a perfect comics event for me because the build up to it was fantastic, but it treads that balance where you don't need to read the tie-ins and you don't need to read the build up to enjoy the core series. You can read the core series on its own, and Johns is really good at summing up, this is who this character is, this is why you should care about him. It's Johns' biggest strength as a superhero writer. So the build-up and the tie-ins are bonus. The series stands well on its own, and I always compare it to Zero Hour, because as much as I like Zero Hour, that to me is an example of an event not done so well. It's got absolutely great art, but I remember reading Zero Hour as a kid, and I hadn't been reading any of the other DC books, and I didn't have a clue who anyone was. You know, I didn't
It's
have
all
a
over
clue.
it's all over the place.
It's
Yeah.
all over the place. You know, these characters jump up. I have no idea why I should care about them. I have no idea who they are. You know, so why should I care that they're getting wiped out by a time event? You know, Power Girl pregnant for some reason. I don't know how or who or how. Obviously, I know how people get pregnant. You don't have to explain that to me.
Well, you see, Paul.
Yeah. But you know that Guy Gardner's in this weird red armor. You know, you don't know what's going on. But Blackest Night, everyone gets a little explanation of like, this is who and maybe not the details, but the important stuff. This is who this person is. This is why you should care about them. This is who Marrow is. This is who Aquaman is. This is who Flash is. And I think it's the perfect superhero event.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm gonna tell you something else, another book I forgot to mention, because there's no way I'm leaving here not mentioning this book. The Rogues tie-in.
Oh,
The
yes.
Flash tie-in was good, you know,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
Black
yeah.
Lantern Solar and all that. I was with that. But that
Yeah.
Rogues tie-in where they was like, the whole Iron Heights is filled with Black Lanterns and we going in there to clean it out. Oh my God.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Captain Cold with the cold grenade, though, man, where he put the whole building on ice. Like, come on, dog. Come on, man. You know? And they had the Black Lantern, Professor Zoom was running around, and he was like, oh, you know, yeah, we can stop him. And he just started using his cold weapons on him, you know, and was like, yeah, there you go, right there, you know. So it's like, man, and then the part where they fed Captain Boomerang's son to the Black Lantern Captain Boomerang.
Yeah.
That was great.
It just gave him that.
I was actually just to close this off, I will say that I was, when rereading this, I was actually wondering if Blackest Night was a good comic years later, because it exists in such a very specific time in DC's history where, again, Batman is dead, is that alone, right? Batman is not in this comic. And Barry Allen has just come back to life. There's two Flashes running around, etc. And I was thinking, like, is this a good comic to give to someone? Like, now? Is it a good comic to give to someone now? Or would it throw them off that it basically has so much going for it, right? Going on in it right away, even as you're starting the story. And then all of a sudden I just realized, as a child, I would have eaten that up. Because with every single bit of unexplained information, I would have wanted to know what was going on. And I would have gone back to my comic shop and said, hey, when did this happen?
Yeah.
And if they had a copy of it, I would have bought it. and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm landing on yes, 14 years later, Blackest Night is still indeed a good event comic.
Yeah.
Can you
Oh
imagine?
yeah. Go ahead, Paulie. Go ahead. Go ahead. You
Sorry,
got it.
yeah.
Nah,
Just
you got
like,
it. Go ahead.
can you imagine if Geoff Johns had written Zero Hour, right? Because, I feel like if, and this isn't a slight against Dan Jurgens, who's one of my favorite writers. I believe he wrote Zero Hour. I do like Zero Hour, but if Johns had written Zero Hour in the way he writes Blackest Night, I would have wanted to go and find out how Power Girl was pregnant. I would have wanted to go out and find out who the hell were the Team Titans. I still don't know who the Team Titans are, and I don't care to find out. But if Zero Hour had been written in the way that Blackest Night was written, I feel like I would have wanted to find out,
No, it's
It's that
true.
kind of comic. Yeah.
It's true. Maybe one of these days we should actually talk about Zero Hour.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That would be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. We'll definitely get around to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I think that it's still an excellent comic and still an excellent event because it's like the way it was planned, right?
Yeah.
Like what Paulie was saying, like, you know, if you certain things obviously you have to understand going in, but they did a good job if you start with the number 0. They did a good job of kind of getting you there. And then just with the other things that are going on with the characters in their own books, you can kind of read those and get that stuff,
Yeah.
but you don't have to, because there's enough in the book that's like you can just stay with the main book. And that was something that they were conscious about doing, right? And they said from the beginning the tie-ins are just if you want more detail on particular characters and what they were doing during this event, but you don't have to have it to actually understand what's happening.
Right.
And I don't know how they did it, but they did it, because there's characters. I mean, because we're talking about cosmic zombies, right? So obviously there's characters in this book that weren't in play in DC at the time, right? So it's like, how do you work that out? Well, we have these other tie-ins that are running for a couple of issues. You can read those if you want to know what was happening with the Superman stuff. Read that. You don't have to, but if you want to, here you are. And and I just thought that everything was really tight, which is funny because there's stuff that they wanted to do and couldn't do it. Like for example, there was supposed to be a scene where they evacuated the entire planet so that it was nobody on the planet but them and these Black Lanterns, right?
Wow.
And they didn't get a chance to do it because if you go back and read the solicitations for number 4, they mention it in the solicitation, right? That in I think it was number 4 that they were like, yeah, we're evacuating the planet. And somebody says it in the book. I can't remember who said it, but somebody said it. I think it might have been like who was it that said it? I can't remember who it was, but they were like, yeah, we need to evacuate Earth. But it's in there. But yeah, just stuff like that that they just weren't able to get to. But yeah, I definitely it's one of those comics that if I know somebody that's into kind of like the zombie genre, I recommend it to them and they love it. It hadn't failed me once.
Yeah. I will also, my closing thought on it is this. A gateway comic for anyone, more than anything else, if you're gonna really appreciate comics, it has to look good.
Yeah.
And Blackest Night looks amazing.
Son. Dog, don't even get me started on that. Ivan Reis was on the late great George Perez's heels with this one. Right. Like, I mean, man, like I don't even understand. 9 issues and the quality and the art don't drop.
George and Alan Davis.
Yeah, and Alan Davis. Yeah.
There's so many pages where there's just lots of characters, and not just lots of characters, but lots of characters that look radically different. Some of them are Green Lanterns, some of them are like Blue Lanterns, some of them are just random superheroes, and it all comes together. It's amazing.
It is
wild.
amazing.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned Alan Davis because that scene at the end where they're trying to coalesce all that energy and all those people that have the rings. They're kind of doing this, and that actually was a homage to Alan Davis in The Nail.
Oh,
Like
I
he has,
see
if you
that.
go,
Yeah, I see
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You go back and he's doing it's from a different angle, but it's the same thing. But it's at the front of the book, I think. But yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, he's admittedly he's an Alan Davis head. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, if you go and pull that issue of The Nail out where they do it, and you put them side by side, it's the same panel. You know.
If you people have never read Blackest Night, if you would like to read Blackest Night, I've got a link down below and also after this video that looks like that. I will also say that yes, it is a thing where the Hal Jordan is not really in the first half of the book. He is off doing something else in the Green Lantern books, but if you read that story, that's a complete story too. So it's got like this type of storytelling where you get these complete stories, but then you put them together. It's a huge thing.